All right, so more chemistry, types of chemical reactions that we have. You got exchange reactions. So an exchange reaction occurs when two or more substances are decomposed and synthesized to produce a new compound. So you have A, B plus CD equals AD plus CB. The way this happens by exchange of electrolytes, depending on what the charge is of the specific molecule. For instance, sodium, Na plus, I'm going to say Na plus. It'll give us an example. Reversible reactions. Reactions in which the products of the reaction can change back into the reactants that they originally have. Cellular metabolism. Because of metabolism, organisms grow and maintain body functions, release or store of energy that they produce and eliminate waste, digest nutrients, and destroy toxins all at once. So these reactions occur after the chemical nature of the substance and allows organisms to maintain homeostasis. Catabolism. Chemical reactions that result from the breakdown of larger molecules into smaller ones that the body can use of its own needs can occur. So energy is converted from adenosine triphosphate, ATP, the body's powerful energy source that drives chemical reactions. Excessive catabolism leads to wasting of tissues. Anabolism. Anabolism is the process of building larger substances in the body from smaller substances. Some of these would be reactions that energy form of ATP. So simple nutrients are used by the body to build chemicals that support cellular function in order to sustain life. Electrolytes. These are the substances that release ions from water. When electrolytes dissolve into water, the negative and positive ends of the water molecules cause ions to separate and interact with water molecules instead of each other. The resulting solution contains electrically charged particle ions that will conduct electricity. A solution is a mixture of two substances. A solvent, yeah, we talked about that. Solvent, solute, the solvent contains a solute, becomes a solution. Consider the following measurement of electrolytes, the unit of measurement of milliequivalents, MEQ. Didn't even know that. 1 MEQ of any cation reacts completely with 1 MEQ of any anion. So I guess you have an equal number of cations to anions. They would cancel each other out in charge. Sodium, here we go. This is the main extracellular cation. Cation, so sodium has a positive charge. Cat, think of the T, has a plus sign, plus, positive, cation. Anions, it's not a cation, so it's a negative. Let's see, where was I? Where sodium goes, water will follow. 98% of the body's potassium is inside of body cells. Principle, intracellular cation. Okay, so in homeostasis, or at the beginning of cellular events that take place in this, so 98% of the potassium is inside the body cells. Circle K, just like the gas station, right? Circle K, it's in the cell. That is where it sits at before anything begins. That is the starting line. Principle, intracellular cation, plays a major role in neuromuscular function and conversion of glucose into glycogen. Calcium, principal cation needed for bone growth, heart function, and blood clotting. Calcium has 2 plus charges, so a negative 2 electrons. It is looking for 2 electrons to make it happy and equalize. Magnesium plays an important role as a coenzyme in the metabolism of proteins and carbohydrates. Primary anions in the body are bicarbonate. Bicarbonate levels are determining factors are a determining factor between metabolic acidosis and alkalosis of the body. Chloride, negative, primarily regulates pH level of the stomach. Phosphorus, an important component of ATP. I can't remember the charge of phosphorus. Acids and bases on the pH scale. Acids are electrolytes that release hydrogen ions in water, hydrochloric acid, and bases are electrolytes that release ions that bond with hydrogen ions, such as sodium hydroxide. Acidity or basicity, alkalinity, all those are the same word, of solutions determined by the amount of free hydrogen in a solution. In body fluids, concentration of hydrogen and hydroxide ions greatly affect chemical reactions. Reactions control certain physiological functions such as blood pressure and breathing rates. The value of the pH is a measure of hydrogen concentration. pH scale range from 0 to 14, 7 being perfectly neutral, not acid, not basic. We in our blood are typically as close to 7, not super close to 7. What are we actually? It'll say. Midpoint, 7 is considered neutral, neither acidic or alkaline. Measurements of less than 7 considered acidic, and then above 7, basic or alkaline. The pH value of the human body is typically 7.35 to 7.45. So not perfectly 7, we tend to be a little bit more basic. Acidosis is caused by blood pH lower than 7.35. If pH falls below 7, coma may result. So it doesn't take a lot before you start to lose consciousness. If the pH rises above 7.8, it causes uncontrollable and sustained skeletal muscle contractions. That's pretty crazy. Alkalosis is when the blood is higher than the 7.45. Buffers are molecules or compounds that regulate changes in the pH. So you have weak acids and buffer systems that include proteins, phosphate ions, and bicarbonate. And then there's also protein buffers. So this figure is the pH scale. So this is where we sit at, slightly, there you go, blood, that's us, 7.35 to 0.45. Baking soda is right around 8. Milk, I always thought milk was basic. Your saliva is slightly acidic. Black coffee is at 5, that's why it stains your teeth. Tomato juice, that's why it's hard to get out of clothes. Vinegar, wine, pickles, lemon juice, all the way to stomach acid. In order to metabolize all that food, it's all the way down to 1. So like if your stomach ruptures and you have let's say like a hole in your stomach that goes to the rest of your body, then I'd say it could lead to sepsis, or maybe not sepsis. It could lead to sepsis, but multiple organ system failure if it starts to if it leaks onto other organs, such as your kidneys are pretty high up. But if it leaks into other systems, it's going to affect things. And then concentrated hydrochloric acid, extremely acidic and can eat through almost anything. And then there's I guess this is empty, but household ammonia, bleach, oven cleaner, all the way to concentrated sodium hydroxide and Drano. So that's why it eats through the sink. And bases are actually more dangerous than acids if you get them on you. At the cellular level, we have cells. These are the basic function of unit in the body. Differentiation refers to cells becoming specialized to perform specific functions. Cells with a common job are grouped closely together and called tissues. Groups of tissues that perform interrelated jobs form organs. Cells that perform the following general functions. You get movement of muscle cells. You have nerve cells, conductivity, so they can send messages and give instructions back and forth. Metabolic absorption, so kidney and intestinal cells. Secretion, mucus gland cells. Excretion, all cells. Respiration, all cells need respiration. Reproduction, most cells. Two general classes of cells, sex cells and somatic cells. So sex cells, they have germ cells or reproductive cells, and then somatic cells are all other cells. Highly organized structures are surrounded by the cell membrane. That got darker. Oh, that's why. The cell membrane encloses by cytoplasm and organelles. Nucleus stores all the genetic material and controls all of its activities. The cytoplasm is the fluid-like material in which the organelles in all of the cell are suspended. Cell membrane gives form to the cell where the cellular activity takes place, provides physical isolation between intracellular and extracellular compartments. Also controls movement and substances in and out of the cell. Can be differentially permeable and also semi-permeable. I hope that's readable. Yeah, it's pretty readable. Has several proteins, membrane proteins embedded floating within it. Channel proteins act as pore through the membrane that allows passive passage of substances into the intracellular compartment. The enzyme receptors, these act as sites where the enzymes can bind. Proteins that act as receptor sites have their binding site on the outside of the cell membrane and are specific to certain molecules. Identifier proteins identify the cell as part of a particular organism and are used to determine the cell from non-self. Self from non-self. Carrier proteins bind to the substance and transport them across the cell membrane. Also, an example would be the sodium-potassium pump. Channel proteins act as a pore through the membrane that allows passive passage of substances into the intracellular compartment. The enzyme receptor, this acts as sites where the enzyme can bind. Proteins that act as the receptor sites have their binding. This is repeating the same stuff that I just read. Membrane proteins, some attach to the cytoskeleton of the cell and help determine its shape. Others allow tissue to form. Identifier proteins identify the cell as part of a particular organism and used to determine the self from non-self. Carrier proteins bind to, we're just repeating the same thing. Cytoplasm. Okay, this is new info. The cytoplasm is a fluid-like material in which the organelles are suspended. It lies within the cell membrane and the nucleus. It contains membranous networks, protein frameworks, and cytoskeleton, or a cell skeleton. Cytosol is a fluid portion of cytoplasm and the sites of many chemical reactions. Organelles perform specific functions related to cell structure, growth, maintenance, and metabolism. Organelles have specific actions that help the cell to carry out all of its activities. Centrioles, these are the cylindrical structures composed of short microtubules that form spindle-shaped structures needed for movement of DNA strands during cell division. Cilia and flagella. I was trying to remember that word a long time ago. I remember what cilia was, but I could not remember flagella. And structures that extend from the certain cell surfaces. So cilia are the hair-like move in coordinated sweeping motions to move fluid over the surface of tissue. So basically, it's almost like millipede legs. Flagella, longer than cilia, often exists on a single flagellum or a tail, like a sperm cell. Ribosomes are either floating freely or attached to the endoplasmic reticulum, where they are often involved in the formation of proteins. They should have pictures of this. I guess that's the picture. There you go. All right. So plasma membrane, that is the outside of it. And then you have mitochondria, powerhouse of the cell. Obviously, these are your centrioles. This spindle cylindrical vacuole, like lysosome. Nucleus has three. Your chromatin, your nucleus in the middle, nuclear membrane, all that is the nucleus. And then you got your ribosomes, that is this whole substance around it. Your glycogen, the Golgi apparatus, intermediate filament microtubule. Yep, smooth endoplasmic and then rough endoplasmic reticulum. All right, so there we go. That's a picture. Honestly, I don't know how much. This isn't really going to be on the test. We're going to skip through this. All right. Here we go. Mitosis and meiosis. Cell division. right, let's get to body parts. We could talk about that. I feel like I've talked about cellular respiration all the time. Cellular signaling, to work as a cohesive unit, the cell must be able to communicate with other cells in order to get what it needs to. Intracellular communication, used to maintain homeostasis, fight infection, reproduce, and perform normal functioning. Alterations in signals can also lead to dysfunction. During cellular respiration is a process that releases energy in the form of ATP, requires types of reactions. Glycolysis, Krebs cycle, also known as citric acid cycle, electron transport system, oxidation, use of glucose by the cell, and to produce carbon dioxide and water and high energy molecule ATP. Glycolysis does not require oxygen and is occasionally referred to as an anaerobic process. After glucose molecule moves through the cell, two phosphate molecules gained from breaking two molecules of ATP immediately attach in separate steps. Next, a series of complex steps occurs to break down the glucose molecule into its final product. 2 molecules of pyruvic acid and 2 molecules of ATP. Pyruvic acid is not good for the system. It's going to produce waste. This figure shows anaerobic metabolism and aerobic metabolism. We like aerobic, we don't like anaerobic, unless we're training intensely for something. Wow, this is complex. Okay, so glucose, this is the food, this is the energy of the cell. Boom, comes in, glycolysis. We get 2 ATP units. We now have energy. ADP, this is actually where adenosine comes from. It's the same, anyway. 2 NADH and NAD, this is your plasma membrane. Mitochondrion, so powerhouse of the cell. This is where we're putting the energy so it can still work. And let's see, we get 6 water, 6 hydrogen, plus hydrogen, 32 ADP. Is these, oh, that's why this is aerobic. Okay, now it's starting to make sense. So yeah, everything up here is your anaerobic. So here we only got 2 ATP. With this we get 32 ATP. It's a lot more energy with oxygen as opposed to without it. We are in rationing mode right now. So you get pyruvic acid and you get lactic acid. This turns into acetyl coenzymes. I'm not sure what that is. And then you get CO2 as well. Citric acid cycle, 2 ATP. So I'm not really sure what happens here. Point being, aerobic is better than anaerobic. Get a lot more energy from it and less waste. In fact, you only should just get carbon dioxide and water. Krebs cycle. Krebs cycle is also called the citric acid cycle. Key to this stage is the breakdown of glucose is the absence of oxygen, because Krebs cycle only occurs in the presence of oxygen, aerobic metabolism. Pyruvic acid is formed during glycolysis and undergoes a complex series of steps that produces several products, including 3 molecules of carbon dioxide and 1 molecule of ATP. The result of this cycle is 6 molecules of carbon dioxide. This principle is important in the concept of capnography, and 2 molecules of ATP for every glucose molecule, ATP. Electron transport system. So the electron transport occurs at the inner cristae of mitochondria, where production of ATP takes place. The ATP and the carbon dioxide and several other products of transfer of their electrons within produces 34 molecules of ATP. This process is considered the aerobic respiration. Considered cellular respiration. At completion of all steps of cellular respiration, 38 molecules of ATP are produced. 2 molecules from glycolysis, 36 from aerobic respiration. Although this is an efficient use of one molecule of glucose energy, some energy sources through heat, so it makes heat. Aerobic versus anaerobic respiration. The presence of oxygen is crucial to efficient oxidation of glucose by the cell. The oxygen is present in majority of respiration that takes place is aerobic. Respiration can also occur in the absence anaerobic respiration. So glycolysis still occurs, pyruvic acid quickly converts to lactic acid, and then when the oxygen is restored to the cell, lactic acid is converted to pyruvic, and aerobic respiration can resume. For the body to run efficiently, certain parameters must be maintained. The amount of distribution and movement of body fluids, you need electrolyte balance, and the amount of hydrogen ions or acid-base balance. All right, total body water, 60% of body weight is from the healthy adult male is water weight, made up of intracellular fluid. So there's water in all of the cells. It's intracellular. 63% of total body weight is intracellular fluid, including water. Maintains large amounts of potassium, magnesium, and phosphate ions. Extracellular fluid is 37% of the body. I don't think any of this is really important. I'm looking for important key points. Cellular transport mechanisms. Diffusion. We know how diffusion works. I really want to cover all of it, but let's just jump to more important stuff. Let's take a break.